If you run a company or manage a team, hiring qualified people quickly can make or break your business. Imagine a position of need going unfilled for weeks or even months because you just can't seem to find the right candidate. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people you want faster. This makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts. You only pay for results on your job post. Just in the last minute that I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Now that is fast. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. Listeners will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Go to Indeed.com/BWN right now to support this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
You and I aren't normally correct on a lot of things. If you've ever listened to this podcast, you know.
You tell us that in our YouTube comments all the time.
It's the arrival. I came in the league, went straight for the title.
Intercepted at the goal line. Jack Sawyer.
You know, some people gotta learn how to lose, man.
The Michigan Wolverines shocked the college football world.
And after all that, it's Ohio State together at the mountaintop.
There's nothing quite like the game.
Michigan versus Ohio State.
This is The Rivalry, proud to be part of the Varsity Network from Learfield and sponsored by Elevated Integrity Construction.
This is The Rivalry Podcast. Jace, JP, Michigan, Ohio State, your college football podcast, all about the Michigan-Ohio State college football rivalry from River Radio Ministries and presented by our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction. We have got a ton to get to coming off the Michigan spring game. But before we do, be sure to connect at Rival Pod on Twitter and Instagram, on YouTube as well, and at rivalpod.com. We were up in Ann Arbor covering the Michigan spring game this weekend, and by we I mean me.
Yeah,
because you weren't able to be talked into that.
No.
But if you are wondering, if you are following us already, and you're like, why haven't you shared any like videos of like Bryce and all that? Because the Big Ten says if you so dare. Share an in-game footage video.
Episode.
Right to jail right away.
You send video of Bryce Underwood straight to jail.
Because the game is on tape delay. They are obviously not wanting to take away from TV viewing. And Michigan, I'm sure, also appreciates that because it's on tape delay because it's after the portal closes. Which, if you haven't noticed, Michigan has a $10 million quarterback that they would like you to stay away from. Thank you very much.
Well, I will. So we're going to obviously get to all the meat, all the stuff that you're wondering because of the spring game. The quarterback competition, what players stood out, what positions have you a little bit worried. But let's just keep it pretty basic because I feel like now, just with the transfer portal, with the way NIL is set up, spring games are changing. I mean, I think it was Wisconsin was out there and they had like trash bins out there to replicate defensive lines. Did you see that picture?
No.
So in their spring game, they literally, it was a glorified practice, which I mean, all spring games are, but even more so a glorified practice. They literally had the like gray and red trash bins that you see around the stadium flipped upside down to represent lines.
Was that to represent your defensive line this year? I'm sorry, it's trash. It's too easy. I'm sorry.
It is. Well, Luke Fickell's going to have a bad time this year. The Buckeyes travel to Madison though this season. That's going to be a great game. But let's just talk about spring games in general because you're having stuff be a little bit different. Ohio State teased that they were going to potentially do a showcase.
Yeah, nobody knew what that meant.
Michigan's on a delay now. They're not live streaming it. So you can catch it this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, Saturday.
And then stuff like what Wisconsin is doing, where you've got trash cans out there to represent players.
Nebraska's canceling it altogether.
Yeah. What are your overall thoughts? Should the spring game still be a thing?
Yeah.
Or should they change it? What should it look like?
Yeah, and we've covered this in other episodes, even this offseason, so I won't rehash all of it, but I'm a big fan of the spring game. I think there's so much obvious loss of amateurism. Like the spring game is such a great opportunity to remember, like, this is just college football. Like we love it, and players are being paid, and like there's all this other stuff going on. But at the end of the day, like, these are college athletes. Like whether you want to say like, well, they're professional, I get it, but like, these are college students.
Yeah,
these are college students playing college football. There's something about the spring game that I think keeps that feel. And then like, even like experientially, like intellectually, I was a big fan of the spring game. This past weekend, I got to take my oldest son up there. Okay. He's in kindergarten. He's kind of like squirrel here, squirrel there, but loves sports. And he's kind of starting to get into it. And I thought this is a great opportunity to pay nothing for parking, to pay nothing for entry fee, to leave an hour and a half in if we want to, drive up there from Columbus and take him. And he absolutely loved it. Like, that's going to be like a core locked in memory for him for sure. Forever. He's going nuts to these random Kendrick Lamar songs that are being blasted through the stadium. So like, he's just having himself a time. And so for me as a dad, I'm walking away going, okay, yeah, we need the spring game. It was absolutely worth it. So yeah, keep the spring game. I have no issue with, hey, like, let's tape delay it. Because I get it. I get you're in a new era. There also comes a line though where I go, we got trash cans out here, and we got that. Like, who's coming to see this?
Yeah,
at least for
there wasn't a lot of that.
At least for Michigan, at least you're getting to see. Yeah, you always got the hype, especially with a kid like Bryce coming in. But you're actually getting to see, like, hey, we're actually, minus the quarterbacks, like, but we're actually tackling, we're actually hitting, we're actually, that was a big thing last year with Ohio State. Like, well, we're not going to have live tackling, whatever. You actually got to see actual football being played, albeit a glorified practice, right? And so like that's a win. I think you keep it.
I'm with you. I think the tradition of it, keeping that alive. I actually really respect how Michigan handles theirs, because I get putting it on delay. The thing I've always liked about Michigan is last year when I was at the spring game, I mean, it was a game. You're tackling, they're playing. You're playing. You're doing the whole thing.
Listen, some boys got blown up right in front of me. I went, that is awesome.
For sure. And same thing this year is the fact that Bryce Underwood plays an entire game is incredible.
Yeah.
And so for me, I look at the spring game and I'm fine even if you pivot. Like, everybody wanted to see Bryce, no doubt. Easy. Just like everybody came to see Jeremiah Smith last year. You have those guys that...
And it's good for the game.
It is.
It's good for the game, right?
And I think I'm even fine if you go, okay, we're going to sit those big name players because we don't want to risk injury. We don't want to do anything.
And that's essentially what Michigan did. Is I don't know if it was every starter, but the mentality was the starters will play for that first 15 minutes, and then minus the quarterbacks, because again, they need
the reps.
They need the reps, and also Davis Warren is injured. The flag, if you're watching on YouTube, just fell.
Right when you said injured.
Right on, Davis Warren is injured. But you know what? That man is a Buckeye slayer, and he can have his flag taped back up. But Davis Warren is injured. Mikey Keene is throwing, but they didn't want to throw him out there. So, like, there were some other reasons there. But all that to say, the starters, the starters played for 15 minutes, and then most of them were pulled. And you got to see those depth guys, which we'll talk about.
I think that's what I look forward to most about the spring game is I'm watching this, and I know... Like last year, I don't need to see a Travion Henderson or a Quinshon Judkins or Will Howard taking any snaps, because I know what I'm going to get out of that. Sure, it would be nice to see those guys, because who wouldn't want to watch them play football?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I want to go see the Mylan Grahams. I want to go see the James People, the younger guys that I'm seeing hyped up all throughout the season while we're getting booms across Twitter from all the coaches on Ohio State staff with all these guys that I'm supposed to be excited about. And then I get to actually go and watch these guys play and get a little bit of a glimpse into the future. And for that reason, I think the spring game needs to stay. I'm fine if you want to protect the starters and do all that. That to me, because of the way it's handled, it's not like they're charging $50, $60 tickets. No. I mean, free parking and free admission.
By the way, free parking, if you can find it in Ann Arbor on game day, let me tell you, is a time. I parked at they can't ticket me now. I parked at some academic looking building with like 25 spots in it. Somehow the Lord provided a ram in the thicket, if you will, and I found a spot, and I parked there, and I looked around and went, all righty. It was like a 5-minute walk. It was great. It was fantastic. It took me a while to find it. I about drove off a cliff a couple times because I was so frustrated. But you're exactly right. I mean, Donovan McCulley would be a great example. Okay?
Exactly.
This is the wide receiver that, for the much maligned and probably rightfully so, Michigan wide receiver room from last year. McCulley was the guy transferring in from Indiana who is thought to be this is going to be wide receiver 1 for you. Big dude, high point the ball, let him go get it. And he played, I think, maybe a snap or two, maybe more than that, but he had a catch, and then that was it. Mm-hmm. Why? Because there's no reason. There's no reason. You want some of these other guys like Hoffman, the tight end, to be able to go and play and get the experience and yada yada. You get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So I think we're both on the same side. You got to keep the spring game. I think it varies how that needs to look. I can't get behind what Wisconsin is doing, where you're bringing out trash cans and stuff like that.
If you're going to do that, just don't call it. Just make it your final spring practice, and people aren't going to come see it. Let's talk about quarterbacks, because that's why, if you're listening to this podcast right now, whether you're a Michigan fan or a Buckeye fan, this is why you're here. Is you want to hear, okay, so how did, especially because you haven't seen the game, how the quarterbacks look, and the answer is they looked like young quarterbacks in April.
They look like a 17-year-old, and what is Jadyn Davis, 19
18
now?
Maybe 19. Yeah,
19.
Let's start with Jadyn, because I think that's the one that people are like, okay, what else is there? So Bryce and Mikey Keene are probably your two front runners for QB1 in the fall.
Yeah, it's not even close to me.
Jadyn Davis is going. I mean, he's going to battle for the position, but he is, at least from what I saw, he is not. It doesn't look to me like he's going to be able to hang with Bryce and Keene for that starting job. You can tell that the talent is there, but the execution just wasn't there. And again, I want to caveat all this like we did with the Ohio State spring game and say, there comes a point where you're looking at stat lines from practice and going, well, this wasn't very good. And you got to take all that with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. But you also, can look at it and go, okay, how does he compare to other guys in the same practice? And Bryce Underwood was just far and away above where Jadyn Davis is at right now. I think Davis threw for 75 yards.
Yeah, he was
had a couple interceptions, I think.
6 of 16, 74 yards and 2 interceptions.
And again, there's 1,000 factors you can throw in there too, right? You're not thrown to your starting receivers. You don't have maybe your starting offensive line out there. What I'm looking for, though, is you're looking for ball placement. How does the ball come out of his hands? That stuff. You can see he's got some of those things, but you can also tell he's not where I would like him to be at this stage. And it almost harkens back to really last year when Michigan had this horrific quarterback play and still somehow eked 8 wins out of that season. But where the frustration with the coaching staff, whether it be Sharon, whether it be Campbell or whoever, was okay, particularly even in the Alabama game, right? Davis Warren gets hurt. Alex Orji's in the portal, and we put Alex Orji back in. Why would you not play Davis there? And I, by the way, I still don't have a good answer for that. I don't care what Jadyn Davis looks like. That's a perfect opportunity to give the kid reps. Yeah. Okay, I'm not going back on that. But what it shows me is maybe there was a lack of developing the raw talent that was had last year. And so my question would still be back on the coaching staff to go, what gives? Obviously Jim Harbaugh being a quarterback guy, right? Hugely instrumental, but even McCarthy would say that Kirk Campbell was massively instrumental in his own development. And obviously JJ McCarthy, arguably one of Michigan's best quarterbacks ever. So there's some sort of disconnect for me with a guy like Davis having the talent that he has, but not having been developed yet. Now, as we head into fall camp with Chip Lindsey being there, maybe that improves. I know Sharon mentioned that Jadyn had improved significantly from start of spring ball to spring game. So I'm not saying that there's nothing there. So I don't buy that, but it certainly is not at this stage in April. Let's be honest where we're at in April.
In his second year.
Yeah. It doesn't look to me like Jadyn is a guy that you want to start unless you had to. And I don't think that's disparaging. I just think that that's fair with where he's at.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the expectation right now is he's QB3 to me.
I think that's fair.
And I don't see that even coming close to budging. I feel like Mikey Keene, when healthy, is leaps and bounds above him. Bryce Underwood, while incredibly raw, you still see the intangibles of an elite quarterback that it's just not even close to me. And you'll probably disagree with this. I think
that's what this podcast is, man.
I think right now, Bryce is still quarterback 2. I think you saw what you needed to see to believe in the hype. But I think with the experience with Mikey Keene coming in, at least at the start, this isn't me saying that Bryce won't eventually get the nod.
Yeah.
But I think when you see QB1 trot out there week 1, it's going to be Keene. And that's just my vibe.
No. I mean, and you're not alone in that. You're alone on this podcast.
I figured you would disagree.
But that's not. And here's the thing. Like, even though I disagree, that's not a crazy take, right? Like, and I know that you weren't at the spring game, so like you're trying to piece together some of this stuff from what I've shared and all that. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to evaluate, right? Because you've seen Mikey Keene. I mean, Mikey Keene started in the Big House week 1 against Michigan last year, right?
Yeah.
Fresno, if you're not super familiar, Fresno State guy transferring in. And I believe he was at, I want to say UCF before that, but don't quote me on that.
I think you're right.
But regardless, like what you have for Mikey Keene is you do have a ton of college experience, which is why Michigan went to get him.
And I think part of that, and this is just all speculation, but I find it hard to believe a guy like Mikey Keene, who could be a starter in a majority of other schools. Not that he's like some elite level talent, but I mean, he's not a bad quarterback. And so a guy like that entering the transfer portal, he's a senior this year. And so coming in as a senior, I just find it hard to believe that a guy like that is giving up a chance to be a starter.
Well, but
anywhere, that makes sense.
But it does. But he's also going in saying, I mean, there doesn't have to be animosity there for you to go, cool, sign whoever you want. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to be the guy.
I think that's it.
Because he's a longtime veteran. He's a competitor.
Yeah, and I think in my mind, it's he thinks he's QB1 right now, which is the right mindset to have.
For sure.
But I think he also knew that they were going to go after a Bryce Underwood style guy.
And you don't, and to your point, you don't know if he's going to, you don't know what the coaches are going to do, because Sharon's been pretty clear. This is going to go into fall camp and we'll name a starter the week before.
And I think it's neck and neck. I'm not trying to say that I think Mikey Keene is like some leaps and bounds better. I think
it's hard to tell where he's at.
It's hard to tell right now because he's not playing. He's sitting. I just think right now you're looking at a Michigan offense that last year struggled to pass the ball.
Yeah.
You finally get a guy that has that ability. You've got a young guy that you don't necessarily need to play your year 1, that you can have learn underneath of a guy like Keene, who's been around college football.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to rush Underwood in there and maybe shake some of that confidence, because while he showed the skill set of an elite guy, and this is total stat watching because obviously I wasn't there, but 12 of 27, a $186, a touchdown, 1 interception, but 88 of those yards and the touchdown was off the 1 touchdown pass. So not overly impressive. Now I do want to say, and you were there, but a lot of what I saw from different blogs, people that were at the game watching this performance, don't read into the 12 of 27 stats totally, because there were a lot of dropped balls from the receiver group.
And that's where at some point you do have to back up and go, it's practice.
For sure.
What I want to see from Bryce, and let's actually talk about like what I saw on Saturday. What you'll see on I believe it's Big Ten Network. What you'll see this coming weekend is what I want to see is exactly what I talked about with Jadyn Davis, is ball placement. How's the ball come out of his hands? Spin, touch, like all those things. He's got it, and nobody is shocked by that. But you want to kind of like, okay, when we get in there, does he actually? The fact that this kid at 17 has this already is fantastic. And so that does come back to the question of, can you take the raw talent and by the time August 30th rolls around, can you have molded that enough that you feel confident rolling that out there? And this is where it's really hard to tell, because I wasn't real confident in some of the quarterback decision-making that we made last year. And how much of that is Sharon? How much of that was Kirk Campbell playing into it? What does that look like with Chip Lindsey? Also completely different players. And so it's hard for me to get a gauge on the decision-making process. I feel more confident knowing that a guy like Chip Lindsey is now in there, that he's going to develop better. He's going to make better calls. And also, there was that speculation last year about, when Alex Orji gets thrust into a system that doesn't have packages designed for him, well, why didn't we have that? You've got completely different. It's bananas to oranges type of comparisons here, right? What I wanted to see from Bryce, I felt like I saw. Like, sure, you'd love for practice spring game stat line to be better. I liked a lot of what I saw. And by the way, the 88-yard touchdown pass is like this flea flicker double reverse thing. Somebody
from like the one.
Somebody said that the air yards alone on that pass would have been Michigan's longest passing play last year. So like when you see it, in one sense, it's not, quote, that impressive, but it's a fun play. Yeah. And also, by the way, it's a downfield passing touchdown. So you will take it and you will be grateful for it. And you'll say, thank you, Lord. Please, may I have another?
So here's my genuine question, though, from a Michigan perspective, because obviously we've all seen the reports with Bryce Underwood. It's between $10 to $12 million spread out over 4 years for his NIL deal. In my mind, paying that much money for a player, you look at guys like Jeremiah Smith, you look at Nico from Tennessee, well, formerly from Tennessee.
Yeah, we'll mention
where,
here in a moment.
You look at the contracts that guys like those that are getting. So the rumor was Nico was asking for like $2 to $4 million. Well, they said he wanted $4 million from Tennessee, but he wasn't getting it. We haven't officially heard, but they said that he was taking less to go to UCLA. And honestly, significant, almost less than what he was getting at Tennessee. Yeah. So I'm looking at these guys, and I'm looking at the Jeremiah Smiths that are young guys, and I'm looking at some of these other players, which Nico is still a good player. Like, would I say he is an elite? No, probably not.
But he's also still a very young player.
But he's very young. But I'm looking at these contracts for that, and then I look at a Bryce Underwood, where it's $10 to $12 million spread out over 4 years. And then seeing the spring game, which you said the zip, the touch on the ball and all that are there. But the fact that it's still almost a question mark of whether or not he is QB1 going into the season, does that even raise the slightest bit of concern for you?
Not even a little bit.
That you're looking at that going, we're spending so much money on a guy for him to not be an immediate day one impact player on this offense.
No.
When that could be spent getting somebody to catch the ball, because it's great if he can throw, but if everything I'm reading is true and all these he's 12 for 27, but half of them are because receivers are dropping it. I don't care if he's accurate if the receivers aren't the ones that are grabbing it.
I mean, there's a couple things there. One, don't believe everything you read. Number two, like there's no question the wide receiver room is not where I'd like it to be. But again, you also have Donovan McCulley is the clear, like this is the guy. Donovan McCulley is going to be your wide receiver one. Samaj Morgan obviously had a really awful sophomore season, and it's hard to tell. And I'm not the first person to point this out. It's hard to tell how much of that's quarterback, how much of that is you, right? But Samaj Morgan, we saw the flashes in his freshman year. This seems like a good opportunity for him to reset now as an upperclassman and step into that. And Michigan still got really good tight ends. It's not Colston Loveland, but Hogan Hansen, Marlon Klein, and company are still going to be really good threats in the receiving game. So you're going to have, if you get the ball to them, they should come down with it, right? It's so hard to compare the wide receiver room last year and feel like we've learned anything for 25 because just completely different quarterback situation. No, as far as do I have any concerns about paying him and maybe not being the day one starter? No, because how often do you see a true freshman come in and start at quarterback? It's not, you see it, but it's not often, right? I mean, CJ Stroud was a true freshman and came in,
Dwayne
right?
Haskins, JT Barrett.
But you don't see that a ton.
Braxton Miller.
Are you just going to run down the list? You guys have had, Ohio State's a great example. You guys have had a vast riches in the quarterback game.
For sure.
But that's also not a common thing. And so, no, if he ends up sitting behind Mikey Keene for a year, I'm not concerned about that at all because he's very clearly, this is the guy going forward.
So you're fine spending the money on I hate to call it a developmental project, but for lack of a better term.
100%. I mean, what Jeremiah Smith did last year was outstanding.
Well, but got other guys.
But it's also different. It is also different being a freshman wide receiver versus a freshman quarterback, too.
I'm more so looking at it through the lens of like a Nico situation, where you're looking at quarterback that would be, if Nico's on the Michigan squad right now, he's clear QB1. And I don't even know if I think it's close. Now, that's not me saying that I think Nico's like some phenomenal talent, but I'm just looking at the market value. And you're seeing these guys that are clear day one starters on almost every other school in the nation, and then you're looking at this 17-year-old kid in maize and blue, and he's not even beaten out of Mikey Keene.
Yeah,
Does that raise even the slightest?
I have no concerns about that. One, because I think Bryce is the starter. But two, even if he's not, I have no concerns about saying, hey, we've got a veteran guy here. Because here's the other thing I would say. I saw somebody compare this situation to kind of a Cade McNamara, J.J. McCarthy. And I went, it's pretty good. That's a pretty good comparison. So if Michigan, let's say that Mikey Keene does start. My hope would be, and I will light the building on fire if it's not, that you have those Bryce Underwood packages like they had for JJ, and it gets real tricky for defenses. We saw this where, it was JJ dropping back and, JJ's throwing, but also, and probably better than JJ, Bryce Underwood can also run. And so now you've got this kid back here, in this pack, and it's like, oh, he's coming in for, well, wait, what's he coming in for? Mm-hmm. That's where it's a lot different from like a straight up change of pace Devin Brown, where it's like, oh, geez, I wonder what will what I used to call the Tate Martell package.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness, well, I wonder what will happen here.
And you and I aren't normally correct on a lot of things. If you've ever listened to this podcast,
that's very fair. You tell us that in our YouTube comments all the time.
I've just responded to some this morning. But the one thing that we did kind of nail last year during the spring game is we walked away in both of our minds having a solidified QB1 for Michigan, and it was Davis Warren. They were talking all spring about it being Tuttle or it being Orgy, and we walked away going, between all the quarterbacks we saw, we felt Davis Warren had the best spring game. Now, Tuttle, I don't even think he wasn't even playing.
No.
But it was between Orgy, Davis, and then
and I don't even know if I'd give us that much credit, but I think we did walk away and go, Davis Warren
we said that he had some touch. We said of the quarterback room, Davis Warren was the most impressive.
We definitely walked away going, okay, so Alex Orgy can't throw.
Yes.
So that's not great. But yeah, and by the way, like I think that's where I kind of summarized this part of the conversation here.
Yeah.
Would be where Michigan's quarterback room was at last year. And that's not an individual knock on those students, on those athletes. It's just like from a football perspective, where Michigan's quarterback talent was last year, and especially in the spring game, where you had all these questions about, okay, well, can we throw the ball downfield? And the answer was no. To look ahead now and go, okay, so now all of a sudden you've got Bryce Underwood and Mikey Keene, you've got Jadyn Davis, like you've got guys that now you go, okay, we've got two guys. At least two. I'll put it this way. We've got at least two guys who are going to battle for QB1, and I feel pretty good about both of them. That's a much better spot for Michigan to be in than they were last year. That's an improvement. There's only up to go from here in the quarterback room.
And now they just need wide receivers that can actually catch it.
Davis Warren beat Ohio State 13-10 in your own stadium.
Well, let's just move it on.
Maybe you feel a little bit, though, like Deshaun Foster and UCLA. See, I told you we'd talk about Nico again. You're looking at your quarterback room knowing what you're doing isn't working, and you need to transfer in some help. Elevated Integrity Construction cannot pay your quarterback $2.5 million a year, but they are the portal to a successful project. Whether it's a church, home, or business build, Aaron and his team are longtime supporters of the rivalry, longtime supporters of doing a job right the first time, with honesty and transparency every step of the way. Go with the folks with integrity in their name. ElevatedIntegrity.com. Rivalry Podcast, also a proud member of the Varsity Network, powered by Learfield. This is a must-have app for everyone who calls themselves a college football fan. Live college football games plus on-demand podcasts just like the Rivalry. Free to download in the App Store and Google Play Store. Search for your school or the Rivalry Podcast. By the way, at RivalPod across social media and rivalpod.com. And while you're at the website, Buy Me a Coffee is our favorite way to have folks support. You can click the little support tab we've got there up at the top. Shirts, stickers, and shout outs all waiting for you when you click that at rivalpod.com. We had a patron who said, hey, just found the podcast. Love it already. Biggest, best, oldest rivalry in college football. No contest. And if you can't do the monthly contribution, at least get yourself a t-shirt, Michigan and Ohio State custom designs. Again, that's clicking support at rivalpod.com. Nico, by the way, says he's transferring to UCLA. As of this Easter Monday morning, there's some question that he hasn't maybe signed paperwork quite yet.
Oh, really? He announced on Instagram everything.
This is a little Google from this morning, so maybe at this point he has. But there was a little question about that. Also, because we're from a ministry, Nico starts off his transfer by saying, I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, which we're all about here. But also, you're in the market because you're demanding millions of dollars more money. So maybe don't start like that. That's all I'm going to say about that. All right, so we talked quarterbacks, and this will lead into kind of the next thing here, is we asked in the Ohio State episode last week about position groups, right? Position groups you felt confident in, position groups you're a little bit worried about. I don't know that I would say I'm going to go move away from quarterbacks here. I'm not worried about quarterbacks. There's obviously uncertainty there.
Yeah.
You feel good about the top 2 QB1 options. There is some concern about depth, but by the way, I'd rather have Jadyn Davis as next on my depth chart instead of whatever, who was it last year? Jaden Denegal. Deep on the depth chart. So I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling okay here. So let me move away from quarterbacks for a second. Let me talk about the uncertainties, and then let me end with some confidence.
Being at the game, what group left you walking away like scratching your head a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still some question on offensive line for me. Reading some of the folks that are more on the boots on the ground in Ann Arbor that are a little bit more X's and O's. And so I'll shout out Mason Brew is a great one. In addition to the rivalry, they do some great stuff. Mentioned that Giovanni El Hadi, Greg Crippen, and Andrew Sprague are kind of solidified. It looks like as starters on the offensive line, but there's at least a couple spots open, and Evan Link would be one of them.
Your boy.
Okay? My boy, Evan Link, which I was very mad. I was pretty sure he had a holding penalty in the spring game. It wasn't him, but it was just a little bit of PTSD there. Evan Link, Babaloa, the 5-star that they signed in there, Brady Norton, Nathan Afobe. So there's a few guys that are going to battle for at least a couple spots there too. So there's still, I think, because Michigan's had such strong offensive lines for years, and then last year it was suspect, and that suspect offensive line plus suspect quarterback play led to the offense output that we saw. So some of it is probably a little bit of PTSD from 2024, but I felt like early in the game, I think it was Rayshawn Benny, and I might be incorrect, but first snap of the game, the defense had a virtual sack because they weren't going to obviously don't hit our prize quarterbacks, please. And so there's that balance of the defense is going to be really good. Spoiler about what I'm confident in, but there's still some uncertainty about, hey, your ability to handle pressure from good defenses. And then wide receivers, the other easy one, right? Like minus Donovan McCulley, what guys step up, right? I mentioned Samaj Morgan, great freshman campaign, terrible sophomore campaign. How much of that is on you? How much of it is on quarterback? This is an opportunity. It feels like for the wide receiver core at large, this feels like a reset. It feels like an opportunity for transfers. It feels like an opportunity for some of these high-profile freshmen that are coming in, and for guys like Morgan who have been there, who were part of national championship teams, who had that mountaintop experience, and then just a really rocky, tumultuous 24 season. This feels like a reset. So I'm very curious. I know that there's probably a likelihood that Michigan goes back to the portal there's been talk about maybe going back to the portal for wide receiver. There's been talk about going back for a quarterback as a depth piece. So we'll see how it shakes up heading into the fall, but that's kind of the easy answer. But I think that's still the answer is wide receiver. And I've still got some question marks about offense, about offensive line.
Yeah.
I think on the confidence side, defense across the board. I know that there have been some
secondary, especially.
See, and there's been folks who have questioned what's the secondary look like with Zeke Berry and Jair Hill. I feel really confident about where they're at. The health of Rod Moore will be a big factor. He didn't play in the spring game. He was there, obviously. He's there, but wearing the Maze, I believe he was in the Maze jersey, wearing that number 9. But what does his health and road to recovery look like? Okay. Like it was spring ball last year that he tore, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was the ACL. Yeah. I'm not overthinking that. And so didn't play at all last year. Massive piece that you hope he's healthy enough to go. But I feel pretty confident in where Michigan's defense is at, particularly on that defensive line, right? TJ Guy, Rayshawn Benny, Derek Moore, sorry. DJ Moore, a different guy. Derek Moore, TJ Guy, Rayshawn Benny, Jayshawn Barham, like the defensive line, the linebacking core. Like I just feel really, really good about where that defense is at. And so I feel strong about that. Obviously had a lot of questions about Wink Martindale last year, ended the season very well.
Yeah.
And so can that continue? Will be the question. The other piece I feel extremely confident about, and this will probably not be a shock, is the running back room.
Yeah.
And this kind of leads into even who are the biggest winners from the spring game. And I'll get to them in a second. But Justice Haynes, Jordan Marshall, obviously limited carries for these guys as starters. But I mean, we saw Jordan Marshall in the Alabama game in real-time reps, and both from the way he ran and even some of the photos snapped getting the trophy after the game, had that Blake Corum look to him. Like literally, like I'm looking at going, that looks like Blake Corum. That's wild. That guy instills a ton of confidence. Justice Haynes, you got that tandem duo now, right? And that's kind of the new way that it seems like a new way that college football's gone. You guys had it last year with Travion and Quinshawn. Obviously, Michigan has had that with Kalel and Dono, but the Corum and Edwards thing and all that. So I feel really good about Justice Haynes. Feel really good about Jordan Marshall. That's a great 1-2 punch, and it's kind of like in years past where it's 1A, 1B, right? It's not 1 and 2. But even further down the line there, and this was where I would say some of the biggest winners in my mind from this spring game, Micah Kaapana had a great spring game. You could see the explosiveness. You could see the quick cuts. It was the type of thing you wanted to see from guys who are going to battle for that RB3. Ben Hall transferred out, and so that running back 3 position is wide open, which again, behind guys like Marshall and Haynes, you may not see the field a ton, but it's about depth, right? It's about depth. It's about what, God forbid somebody tweaks an ankle. Or do you have a guy who can step into that role? Kaapana was really good. The guy who came out of nowhere for me, Bryce Cudzal, and is so hard to pronounce his name, Kuzddzal, Cudzal. Let me pull up real quick. Let me pull up his stat line.
You still said that right.
I'm not either, but I'm going to say it like it's kind of like Iam Aliava, where it's like, just say it with confidence.
I still don't know. Yeah, I still don't think I say it right.
Let me pull up his stat line here. Because again, the stats don't matter, but I want to give you a picture of this kid that I had not heard of. Okay. I cover Michigan. I had not heard of this kid. Bryson Cudzal, I said it differently that time. 14 carries for 105 yards. I mean, like, he had showing. And it was not just the stat line. It was, you can tell, kind of like with quarterbacks, right? How does the ball come out? Where's the placement? What's the spin? What's the touch? What's the explosiveness look like? What's the cut? What's the read? This kid had it. And so, like, I feel really, really confident that there's 3, if not 4 names on that depth chart that I immediately go, yeah, I feel really good about that. Like that's not normal. Yeah, it's normal to have a top guy that you feel really good about. It's even becoming more normal with that tandem to be like, okay, like we've got a pretty good, but to feel like you've got a very confident 1-2 and then a pretty good 3-4 in there. I mean, that's a really good position for especially Michigan's style of football, which whether it's Mikey King or Bryce Underwood is still going to run through the trenches, right? That is even with JJ, right? Even with JJ McCarthy and his ability to throw the ball, it still ran through the run game. And so that's not going to change. That should give Michigan fans a lot of confidence, even with some of those uncertainties on offensive line, because the offensive line is going to be a step forward from last year, right? Quarterbacks, whoever starts, will be several steps forward from last year. So you can feel really good about those things. But I'd say Cudzal is probably my biggest winner from the spring game.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said, I pretty much agree with. I think biggest group that would worry me as a Michigan fan, the wide receiver room. I know you talked a little bit about Donovan McCulley.
But there's still concerns.
Until I see it on the field, I just can't stay with
really right after Easter until I see it. How about you believe?
Then same thing. Samaj Morgan has been a guy that his name has been brought up several times on this podcast alone. And last year wasn't it?
It wasn't.
And obviously you're losing Loveland, which I think was really the only part of the passing game last year that had any sort of fire to it. So I'm looking at this wide receiver group and I'm going, great, you upgraded the quarterback room, but you didn't the wide receiver room.
Well, that's not true though.
And so I look at that and I go, that's still a major need. I feel like you absolutely have to go get somebody out of the portal.
Well, and that's where I'd say though, like you are correct that it's still a major concern, but it's not fair to say they didn't upgrade that room. I mean, they went to the portal. They got McCulley out of it.
I don't think that they took a step forward. Do I think?
What do you mean they didn't take a step forward?
You lost Loveland. He was the only contribution on that passing game last year.
It is a huge loss. But I would argue though that you have got other pieces that can fill in very similar type roles on that tight end side, not to the same level, but you can fill in a lot of those roles. And you have gone to the portal to get guys who can actually make that whole thing better. And your freshmen coming in can help boost that depth as well.
Yeah, I just don't see them making as big of an impact. I think McCulley.
They're not going to be Ohio State's wide receiver.
Well,
there's no question about that.
For sure, I'm not even thinking that. I just don't. Until I see McCulley out there in the regular season, I don't know how much of an addition he truly is. And looking at the tight end room, I think you've got guys like Klein that still can go in there and provide and be some form of support. I just don't think that it is that big of an advancement from last year. So I look at the running back room. I look at the running back room and I go, all right, I feel good about them. But if I'm looking at this offense and I'm going, well, there's not, at least last year, people had to take into account Colston Loveland. This year, depending what it looks like with a McCulley, I don't know if there's a single guy in that receiver room that I feel like I've got a double. And so I feel like defenses can really key in on a guy like Justice Haynes. And so that would make me worried as a Michigan fan is the offense too one-sided? And last year I thought they were pretty one-sided, but sure. You at least had the option that people had to be aware of in Loveland. I haven't seen it. It's not that
game hasn't been televised.
It's not that group can't get there. McCulley could come out and have a 1,000-yard season.
Sure.
Samaj Morgan could have a comeback year.
Sure.
Like there's guys that have the talent, but
you have to prove it.
You've got to prove it. I've not seen it on paper. So to me, the wide receiver room is a huge question mark. The guy that I was really impressed with, and I was kind of surprised to hear you say, I mean, I get what you're saying. I think I would disagree slightly. The player that I thought had a really, really good day was Justice Haynes. Yeah, sure. And to me, he's clear RB1. I think Jordan Marshall will get snaps. He's a very talented guy. We saw it in the Alabama game. But I just think that Justice Haynes is the RB1. You might see a Jordan Marshall? Jordan Marshall, yeah. I was mixing their name up. You might see a Jordan Marshall go in like a goal line package, something like that. I just think the clear cut of the touches, you're going to see a lot of what we saw last year where it's going to end up being a Khalil Mullins. Well, see, maybe because there are some games
you're arguing for what should have been.
There are some games where you were like, "Where the heck is Khalil Mullins?" And he was like eating popcorn on the sideline because of course.
Could have been, man.
But to me, Justice Haynes is. The guy's a stud. He's going to be an elite level guy for you.
I feel good. However, they split the touches. I think it's going to be a lot more even than you think. But I feel whatever they roll out there. I feel really confident in that.
Yeah, both of those guys have the skill set to be effective. And I get worried until I see it out there on the field, and I'm not worried because I'm a Buckeye. But
sure.
As a Michigan guy, I'm looking at this passing game.
You want to see stuff. You want to see stuff put together, right? Like you want to see Julian saying in actual game time situation against Texas. Do you look rattled? Do you look confident? What is that? Cool. You did it in practice. What's that mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah. And just to finish off kind of the wide receiver thing, nothing you're saying, by the way, is crazy. I happen to disagree about the talent that is in the room that I think the execution will be maybe not leaps and bounds, but several steps ahead at least. I think the floor is several steps ahead. I think the ceiling is leaps and bounds. So I would disagree with you there, but I do agree with you, by the way, about the big questions about what will that actually look like on the field. I think that's very fair. And the loss of Colston Loveland, I mean, is massive. The kid's going to be a top 20
dude
pick.
Was best tight end in the country.
And by the way, with the draft coming up on Thursday, like it will be very interesting to see. Like in my mind, I think Michigan's first player off the board is probably Mason Graham.
Yeah.
There was talk about Will Johnson. By the way, Mason and Will were both at the game, which was pretty fun to see. But with Will's injury and stuff, I think there's just some question there that he'll still go top 20, right? Like there's no way he drops below that. But I don't think it's going to be a top 3 pick the way it was.
No.
Mason Graham very well could be in that top 5.
I think he's top 5.
Will Johnson probably in the top 12. Colston Loveland in the top 20.
Buckeyes on the verge of, I think it's tying the most draft or rookies drafted in overall with like 17 or something. I mean, a couple of guys you might see in Emeka Ibuka late first round.
Yeah.
Jack Sawyer, JTT.
Who do you think is the first guy off the board for you? Because I would think Emeka.
the first Buckeye off the board.
Yeah.
Man.
Because again, it's not an NFL podcast. Like, you're a Browns guy, I'm a Lions guy. I'm not worried about, well, who do the Lions take, but just who's the first guy?
There's a couple of guys you could go with. I think a couple of these guys will go close. That nobody will go top 10, but you might see a guy like, I could see a Jack Sawyer. I could see a Mecca. I could see, honestly, even a Denzel Burke. I could see a Seth McLaughlin, Donovan Jackson, some of those guys going like late first, second round kind of guys. And then just going in packs. Like, I don't think any of those guys go past the third round. Like, I think it's first or second round for a handful.
I think for the guys you mentioned,
it's probably a Mecca. If I really have to,
I was going to say Sawyer is, for me, it's somebody taking a flyer on him in the second round.
See, I think Sawyer, I don't know. It's tough.
And obviously, I'm going to be more biased against, and you're going to be for.
It's
so like,
tough. I think
Sawyer. It depends on what you need too, right? Yes, it depends on the team that's there. And hey, I need a guy in that position. Boom, I'm going to go take him.
My money would go Emeka going first out of the Buckeyes, but I wouldn't put it past a Denzel Burke or a Jack Sawyer. I think those would be safe bets.
Where do you think? And we'll wrap up here with looking at my expectations for Michigan in the fall here, but so we can at least sprinkle some Buckeye stuff in here. Where does Will Howard go? Because this
team-wise or round-wise, like, or both.
Where do you think he gets picked up? Because this is a really, and again, I'm trying to take the giant foam Wolverine head off for a second.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm gonna answer the question in a way that you're gonna hate. But
is this the thing where like Jesus answers the question with "Let me ask you a question"? Because
what I see.
Jesus can do that, not you.
What I see with Will Howard is a 4th or 5th round guy that you take when you already got a proven starter, that you don't need Will Howard to come in and save the day. He can be QB2, QB3, and you fall in love with him because of his leadership traits. He's got the skill set, but I think he needs to sit back and really get adjusted to the speed of the game, be around those guys. But you saw it this past year at Ohio State. He was able to come in, take command of that huddle, something that you didn't see Kyle McCord do. You saw the intangibles that you just can't teach somebody. You saw that fire, the leadership, even in all the hype videos after the championship. You saw him commanding the team in the locker room. That stuff you just can't teach.
Yeah.
The stuff you can teach.
You either have it or you don't.
Yeah, the stuff you can teach, he still has the skill set to accomplish, but he needs to go to a situation where he can not have to deal with the stress of going in right away and being the savior. So you're not going to see him go 1st or 2nd round. He's going to go 3rd round at absolute earliest. I see him probably 4th or 5th round. I don't know a team. I just think you're going to go somewhere where that team's already got somebody at that QB position that they're not even worried about it. He is for lack of a better term, a project quarterback that they bring in, let him sit almost like an Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre kind of a vibe, and he just gets to sit and learn, get adjusted to the speed of the game. 2 or 3 years down the line, you might see him either getting traded to be a starter somewhere or taking over the reins.
No, I think that's I don't have a good answer for that. I was curious because if I give that answer, everyone's going to be in the YouTube comments again about
Canadian Football League.
Hey, do you like Saskatchewan?
Yeah. Get ready to learn.
Get ready to learn French, buddy.
Get ready to learn how to make maple syrup, buddy.
My family is Canadian. It's okay. I can say it. It's not a problem. To finish out here, we talked about with Ohio State last episode, expectations for fall ball. And we kind of looked at the schedule and just kind of tried to balance it out here. Michigan, I feel like, has got a fairly similar difficulty schedule to Ohio State's. Maybe a hair. The Michigan fight, by the way, I take back, I just collapsed.
This guy.
I think it's pretty comparable to Ohio State's, where you guys have Texas. It's a home game, but like still, you play Texas, you play Penn State, you go on the road to Wisconsin and Washington. Michigan's got a kind of a similar vibe. Michigan gets Wisconsin and Washington at home, but Michigan does also go to Oklahoma week 2, to Nebraska week 4, and has to go out to USC. So like it feels like a similar difficulty level. Obviously, you've got the game. I mean, that's going to be in there. And for Michigan, you've got that extra rivalry game with Michigan State, which is always just going to be a dogfight, right? Like, it's always going to be that way. And that one is also on the road for whatever that's worth this year, too. For Michigan, I hesitate. I don't even know if we said, hey, what's Ohio State going to go next year?
No, but it was just expectations overall.
I think at the end of January, when we record our very last episode, we did way too early national champion picks, and I took Michigan. So why would I back off from that now?
Ridiculous.
Right? I mean, this certainly feels like, I'll put it this way. This certainly feels like a playoff team to me. Like Michigan certainly feels like a playoff team. I think you could probably lose. You could probably go. This is probably a 10-2 team. This is probably a 10-2 playoff team.
What 2 losses?
Oklahoma. I'll tell you, I'm really nervous about Oklahoma, and I think for good reason, right? Because whether it's
week 2,
it's week 2. It's early, and again, if I'm going to hang out on the Bryce Underwood as the starter thing, that's going to be the experience piece, right? Where you don't have the experience playing on the road in the SEC. Okay, so I mean that's a tough task, and whether it's Mikey Keener or Bryce, that's a tough task for week 2. So I'm nervous about Oklahoma. I have some nerves about going to Nebraska as well. I have some nerves about going on the road with, oh gosh, now I'm going to sound like an idiot, but what's his face?
Dylan Raiola?
Thank you. I've got some nerves
Patrick
about
Mahomes Jr.
I was going to say Patrick Mahomes was the only name, and I'm like, well, that's not it. Yeah, I mean, I've got some nerves about going to play in Lincoln. It's the Big Ten, and it's the current Big Ten where you could drop just about any game, right?
Not at Michigan State. That doesn't worry you. I think Childs is going to be a year better. They've got I forget the freshman wide receiver they had last year.
There's a sense in which Michigan State will never worry me and will always worry me, right?
Yeah, we'll see that week. You'll be a nervous wreck.
Talent-wise, Michigan should be able to beat Michigan State again, right? For what? 3rd year in a row, 4th. I don't know. I've lost track now. It's really fun. But also like that game is always, even in the year that Michigan beat up on them a couple years ago, like 49-0 or whatever it was, like heading into that game, there's always a bit of, okay, do you have it? Why? Because it's your second biggest game. It's a massive rivalry game. Oklahoma and Nebraska worry me. Obviously, the game is always going to be a toss-up, right? This last year, for goodness sake, it doesn't matter what your record is coming in, that game's always going to be a toss-up. Obviously, I think Michigan's going to win the game, just like you think Ohio State's going to win the game, right? But I feel like going into the fall ball, I feel like overall, for both these spring game episodes we've done, spoiler alert, if you want a summary statement, both these teams are good. That's your summary. Ohio State,
football well.
Ohio State, play football well. Michigan, still good at ball. Like it's like that's one of the beauties that even coming off a year like Michigan had last year, you turn around and you go, okay, I still think we're going to be pretty good. Ohio State came off a national title, had an excruciating loss to Michigan, and turned around and can say, yeah, it's lost a bunch of guys and still can go, yeah, I think we're still going to be pretty good. That's the beauty of these two programs and the beauty of this rivalry and why we love covering it on this podcast is that like these teams truly do, especially for better or for worse in the NIL era, it's reload, right?
And that's the expectation.
There's going to be growing pains with Julian Sayin and let's call it Bryce Underwood, right? There's going to be, what's the defensive line look like? What's the offensive line look like? What's the wide receiver core look like? What's our secondary do? This is the beauty of these two teams is that they're both going to be really good again. They're likely both going to make the playoff. And come November, if one team is 0-11, the other's 11-0, it doesn't matter.
And I think, and I won't predict Michigan's entire record, but I do genuinely believe that we've talked about it a handful of times on this podcast, the game losing its luster a little bit.
At least losing its practical impact. Sure.
But I think this is the year it gets back to it because I think this is the year where both teams will maybe have a loss or two on their schedule. And that will actually be the game that might keep somebody out of the playoffs.
Where you might be sitting at like that 12, 15 in the country spot. That would be fascinating.
I think that's where I see because the quarterback position for both teams is inexperienced.
Yeah.
And even if they throw out a Mikey Keene, I'm not convinced that he is enough of a leap to where to me I see both of these teams. And this is all speculation because we haven't seen a second of football really.
Yeah.
I could see both teams coming in with 2 losses. And whoever loses that game doesn't get a playoff bid.
Which honestly, again, and this will surprise no one if you've listened to the podcast, is the biggest thing that I miss. And I think you would say this too. The biggest thing that is missed from the expanded playoff is that this game can't doesn't necessarily cement the end of your opponent's season, right? For so many years, we've had, there's been a couple like blowouts and stuff, but for so many years, we've had, if you want to go to the playoff, if you want a shot at winning this little trophy guy right here, I just knocked it over.
Can you not break the championship?
I'm so sorry. But if you want a shot at that, you got to go through Michigan, or you got to go through Ohio State. You got to win in Columbus. You got to win in Ann Arbor. And if you can't do it, you don't get a chance.
I think
that's the way it should be.
I think this is the year.
We need the NCAA or the playoff committee or whoever to go just make a little special paragraph caveat that says, by the way, we don't care what your record is. If you lose the game, you are not invited to this little tournament.
You can't sit with us.
I would sign that tomorrow. Michigan could be 11-0 heading into that game, lose the game, and I would go, yeah, we shouldn't be in
until
there.
It happens, and then you would be sad.
And then I'd go, well, what I meant was
we only lost 13-10.
In spirit, we wouldn't participate. But when is the game and can I be there? Thank you for subscribing to the podcast wherever you're listening right now. More off-season episodes heading in. Full episodes do start in August. We will have more between now and then, so don't worry. Across social media at RivalPod and rivalpod.com. Thanks for following and thanks for subscribing.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RivalPod. To learn how to support the show, shop our merch, and read our blogs, visit rivalpod.com. Make sure to follow us wherever you're listening now. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.
Are you looking for a new job or want a career change? Look no further than Monster.com. Need a little help standing out? Our expert resume writing services will make sure you shine. Want to brush up on your interview skills? Engage with our AI interview prep tool. Want some advice on negotiating your new salary? Visit our salary tools and extensive library of career advice articles, and you'll have all the tips and tricks you'll need to succeed. Visit Monster.com today and take the first step towards your career. Monster.com. Find your right job fit.